On Thanksgiving morning, a day that is supposed to be about warmth, family, and gratitude, I woke up to a silence so profound it felt like a physical absence. I rolled over, blinking sleep from my eyes, expecting to hear the sounds of my mother already bustling in the kitchen, the scent of roasting turkey drifting up the stairs. Instead, I was met with nothing, not a sound. The air in the house was thin and cold. I got out of bed, pulling on a robe, and walked down the hallway. The kitchen was spotless. The dining room table was bare. The whole house was empty. It was then, standing alone in the middle of a perfectly silent house on a national holiday, that I saw the note taped to the refrigerator. It was written in my sister Bethany's elegant, bubbly handwriting, and it simply read, "Hey, surprise trip to Maui. Got a great deal. Didn't want to wake you. See you next week. Zoxo." The shock wasn't just in the betrayal. It was in the casual cruelty of the execution. My entire family, my parents, my sister, and her husband, had boarded a plane and flown to Maui without me, leaving me behind as if I were a forgotten piece of luggage. Did I break down? Did I cry and call friends begging for a holiday meal? No. I looked at that note, and a cold, clear resolve settled over me. I didn't cry. I called the movers 5 days later. When they finally got around to checking their voicemail, they were screaming. Tell me honestly, given this level of casual, outright abandonment, would you have done exactly the same thing to reclaim your life and your property? To truly understand why that Thanksgiving morning wasn't just a moment of sadness, but the final, explosive catalyst for me, you need to understand the dynamics of the last 15 years of my life. Living with them, the house they left me in was not theirs. It was technically mine. I was, essentially, my family's live-in ATM, maid, and scapegoat, all wrapped into one neatly packaged, easily ignored daughter. My name is Clara, and I'm 32 years old. The house, a beautiful, sprawling 4-bedroom colonial in a desirable suburban neighborhood, was purchased 8 years ago. My parents had been struggling financially after a bad investment, and I, freshly out of college with a high-paying remote tech job, offered to help. I bought the house outright, put my name on the deed, and then, because they emotionally manipulated me into it, I let them live there with me. The agreement verbally was that they would maintain the house, contribute a small amount to utilities, and crucially, treat it as a family home where all of us, including me, were respected. Equals, of course, that's not what happened. The minute the keys were in the door, the dynamic shifted. It became shifting, what no longer serves your destiny. And I was just the generous, overly sensitive daughter who got to sleep in the smallest spare room, which had been relegated to me because Bethany, the golden child, needed the large guest room whenever she visited. My contribution, the entire cost of the mortgage, the property taxes, the insurance, and 80% of the utilities, was treated not as a gift or an investment, but as a silent, endless obligation. My parents, Robert and Susan, were the perfect definition of high-functioning narcissists. Their world revolved around appearances and convenience. My sister, Bethany, was their masterpiece. Beautiful, married to a wealthy man, always traveling, and constantly praised. I, the quiet, analytical one who worked from home and kept the family afloat, was invisible until they needed something. A financial transfer, a ride to the airport, or someone to fix the smart TV. The Thanksgiving dynamic was the perfect example of this. For the last 5 years, I was expected to be the sole chef and organizer of the massive, traditional holiday meal. I did all the shopping, all the prep, all the cooking, and all the cleaning. My mother would sit in the living room, occasionally offering vague, unhelpful advice, while my father would demand specific, complicated dishes that he would only take 2 bites of. Bethany and her husband would arrive late, offer a perfunctory happy Thanksgiving, eat ravenously, and then promptly retreat to the aforementioned large guest room to watch football, leaving the massive pile of dishes to me. The agreement was tacit. My financial contribution bought the house. My labor bought my seat at the table. This year, however, things had been different. I had been asking ever so subtly if we could share the load. I even suggested ordering a catered meal. My mother waved off the idea with a dismissive sigh. "Clara, darling, you know you're the only one who does the turkey right. We're counting on you. It's tradition." That word, tradition, was the iron fist in the velvet glove of guilt. They had spent the entire week before Thanksgiving discussing the menu with me, making specific requests, and reminding me when to start brining the bird. My father had even checked on Wednesday night to make sure I had bought the expensive, artisanal stuffing mix he liked. I had been up late on Wednesday night, prepping the cranberry sauce and meticulously cleaning the entire house in preparation for the supposed feast. I went to bed exhausted, feeling the familiar mix of resentment and forced familial obligation, but expecting a full, chaotic, normal Thanksgiving day. Then came the note on the fridge: Maui, Maui, not a last-minute emergency trip, not a surprise work conference. A surprise, clearly luxurious vacation that they had meticulously planned and booked without ever mentioning a word to me. They had actively lied, letting me believe I was needed and expected to perform my traditional duties, only to abandon me when the labor was done. They didn't even bother to wake me up. They just left. It was the ultimate, unmistakable message: you are not family, you are staff. You are disposable. I walked through the silent house, the note still crumpled in my hand. I looked at the raw turkey sitting in the fridge, the fresh pies on the counter, and the perfectly set table waiting for guests who were now 5-0 miles away, sipping Mai Tais. That moment was the clearest I had ever felt in my life. The years of gaslighting, the emotional blackmail, the financial abuse, it all evaporated in the face of this absolute, undeniable proof that I meant nothing to them. I stood there, not crying, but feeling a profound, terrifying stillness. This house, the one I paid for, was my cage, and they had just left the door wide open. My first call wasn't to a friend or another relative. It was to my lawyer, Mr. Thompson. I told him everything, from the initial purchase agreement to the note on the fridge. He was appalled but not surprised. "Clara," he said, "your name is the only one on the deed. They have no legal right to residence. They are, legally speaking, uninvited guests who pay no rent. You can evict them, but given the circumstance, I have a more surgical suggestion." His suggestion was brilliant, perfectly tailored to the level of callousness they had displayed. Since they had left the home unattended, they had, in a sense, abandoned their possessions temporarily. We needed to be precise, legal, and fast. I immediately called a highly reputable, insured moving company. I explained that I needed an immediate, full house moving service, explaining only that the residents were unexpectedly away and would not be returning to the property. Due to the holiday and the short notice, it cost me an astronomical amount, but I didn't care. The price was worth the freedom. They could fit me in the following Monday, 4 days later. During those 4 days, I was methodical. I packed up all their personal effects, their clothes, photo albums, furniture, dishes, the hideous antique clock. My mother cherished everything. I left only what was absolutely essential to the structure: appliances, fixtures, and the large pieces of furniture I actually wanted to keep, which were surprisingly few, as they had replaced most of my original pieces with their own over the years. I also meticulously documented every single item, creating a comprehensive inventory list with photographic evidence, all under the guidance of Mr. Thompson. I was ensuring that, legally, I was giving them full access to their belongings, just not in my house. I rented a climate-controlled storage unit, paid for 6 months upfront, and had the movers load literally every single possession they owned into it. The key to the storage unit, along with the moving company's receipt and the inventory list, was placed inside a large, empty envelope that I sealed and addressed. The most satisfying part of the process was on Monday, watching the huge moving vans pull up to the house I owned. It took the movers nearly 8 hours to empty the entire place. When they were done, the house felt enormous. It was mine. The silence that had been so cold on Thursday was now a beautiful, liberating canvas. The house was finally ready for me to live in, not just to service. I changed the locks, installed a high-tech security system, and put the sealed envelope containing the storage unit information into a small safe, ready for delivery. So, that's the situation I was in. I had literally emptied the house of every trace of my family's physical presence and changed the locks. I was standing in my freshly reclaimed house, eating leftover cranberry sauce and feeling a level of autonomy I hadn't known since I was a child. I had executed my move, and the trap was sprung. The quiet revenge was complete, but the confrontation, the inevitable, explosive climax was still coming. They were due back late Tuesday night. Before I tell you what happened next, what I did with the final envelope, and how they reacted to finding their lives packed into a storage unit, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have waited for them to arrive before confronting them? Or would you have sent a final, short message explaining everything? Would you have felt any guilt for the severity of the action? I didn't wait. The thought of them walking through the door and immediately starting their manufactured drama and hysterics was something I couldn't bear. This needed to be handled cleanly and remotely. I wanted the scream, but I didn't want the performance directed at me. On Tuesday morning, before they even boarded their flight home, I logged into their email addresses. Yes, I had their passwords. I managed their bills and finances, remember, and changed the settings so they couldn't access anything. This wasn't strictly necessary, but it felt good to sever the final electronic strings. I then activated the most crucial part of my plan. I had prepared a final email, and I sent it simultaneously to all 3 of them. My mother, my father, and Bethany, with the subject line, "The New Thanksgiving Tradition." The email was short, formal, and utterly devoid of emotion or explanation for their Maui trip. It read, "To the occupants of my house address, I hope you enjoyed your surprise trip to Maui. As the sole owner of the property, I have determined that it is no longer convenient for me to accommodate your long-term stay. Therefore, effective immediately, your tenancy has been terminated. All of your personal belongings have been moved to a climate-controlled storage unit. The unit number, access key, and a full inventory list are contained within a sealed envelope. You will find this envelope taped to the front door upon your arrival. Please arrange for collection of your items immediately, as I will only be paying for the first 6 months of storage. Any communication regarding this matter must be directed through my legal counsel, Mr. Lawyer's name. She looks terrible. Information is below. Please note, the locks have been changed. Any attempt to enter the property or contact me directly will be considered trespassing and harassment and will result in legal action. Best regards, Clara." I then blocked their numbers one last time, turned off my cell phone, and settled in to wait. The climax occurred late Tuesday night. They arrived home exhausted, jet-lagged, and undoubtedly expecting their tired, invisible daughter to be waiting up for them, maybe even offering a late night snack. Instead, they found a beautiful silent house, a new electronic keypad on the door, and one large sealed envelope taped right where the Thanksgiving note had been. I know exactly what happened because my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, called me the next morning, absolutely scandalized. She had heard the commotion and watched the whole thing unfold from her living room window. When they first saw the envelope, they laughed, thinking it was some kind of elaborate late-night gag. My father tried his old key. It didn't work. He tried the backup key he kept hidden under the garden gnome. It didn't work. Panic started to set in. My mother tried to peer through the window, but the blinds were drawn. Finally, they tore open the envelope. According to Mrs. Henderson, that's when the screaming started. Not just shouting, but primal, guttural screams of shock and rage. My mother sank onto the welcome mat, wailing about her antique clock. My father, in a fit of pure fury, threw the inventory list onto the lawn and started banging on the door, shouting my name, demanding I let them in. They didn't even notice the small paper plate I had left on the porch, holding 2 slices of leftover pie for them, a final, utterly silent irony. They spent nearly an hour outside, oscillating between screaming and frantic dialing of my now dead phone number. My father called Mark, my cousin, anyone he could think of, spinning the frantic narrative that I had gone crazy and stolen everything they owned. The next few days were a blur of escalating attempts at contact, all of which were deflected by my lawyer. Mr. Thompson was a rock. He simply forwarded them the deed, reiterated that they had no legal claim, and gave them the contact information for the storage facility. They had to deal with the logistical nightmare of recovering all their possessions, a nightmare that, frankly, they deserved. They lost their access to the house, and they lost their live-in bank and chef. My father, having exhausted all his personal rage, eventually had to swallow his pride and call the storage unit company. The beautiful vacation to Maui had cost them not just the ticket price, but their entire way of life. The aftermath was profound. I got a few angry, self-righteous messages from Bethany via her husband's phone, condemning me for ruining Christmas and destroying the family. I didn't respond. I used the quiet of the house to finally decorate it exactly how I wanted. I ripped up the gaudy wallpaper my mother loved, painted the walls deep, calming colors, and put my own creative, eccentric furniture back into the living room. For the first time, I felt like I was breathing my own air. My parents and Bethany are now renting a much smaller, less luxurious home, straining their own finances and Mark's good graces. They quickly realized that without my constant financial lifeline, they couldn't maintain the lifestyle I had subsidized for them for years. I haven't seen any of them since that Thanksgiving, and I don't intend to. The peace I gained is the greatest gift I could have ever given myself. The silence in the house is no longer an absence, it is freedom. It is the sound of my life finally, truly belonging to me. That Maui trip, meant as an act of casual cruelty and abandonment, turned out to be the greatest act of liberation my family could have ever performed for me. They locked themselves out of my life, and I finally got to turn the key. This entire experience taught me that sometimes the only way to heal toxic family relationships is to sever them entirely, even if it feels terrifying. Your peace is priceless, and your boundaries are worth more than any strained sense of duty. I am finally living in my own home on my own terms, and I wouldn't trade that empty house on Thanksgiving morning for anything. Thank you for letting me share this deeply personal story. Like this video if you believe I was justified in my actions, and that my family got exactly what they deserved. Subscribe for more stories about reclaiming power and setting boundaries, and please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'll see you all in the next story.